everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a Q&A style video all about sewing tips for beginners. So I have put together some top tips based on your questions. Hopefully this will help you if you are a complete novice with sewing. And also I thought I would add in some little extras like finishing your sewing makes, adding little special touches. I'm also going to touch on upcycling as well and just give you all the basic knowledge that you need to get started with sewing your own clothes and your own makes. If you're new to my channel, make sure to subscribe, give this video a thumbs up. I'll be posting every Sunday, that is my upload day. So hopefully you guys can join me and my regular video content on here. Just a disclaimer, I'm filming this with natural light and it is a very cloudy / rainy / sunny day. So if the lighting changes throughout the video, I apologise in advance. I'm not using any of my lighting equipment today, I'm just using the sun. The sun is my equipment today. I am going to do little overlays through the video of the things that I'm talking about, or I'm going to be putting up little pictures. I'm a very visual person, so just having someone sat talking to the camera isn't going to be helpful. So I thought I would try and make this as helpful as possible and demonstrate what I'm talking about, as well as showing maybe a picture of it or showing something that I've already made to kind of describe it, and I hope that will be helpful. So let me know in the comments. This is my first sort of style of video doing this, so let me know if it is helpful to you to see it in that way. So number one, what sewing machine do I buy as a beginner? It's a massive one because there's so many brands, there's so much choice, and as a beginner when you're researching it, it can be a little bit intimidating and a bit overwhelming because you just don't really know what to start with. The first thing I would mention is it is very much down to your budget, it's personal. But as a beginner, if you're looking at just making basic clothing, and you just want all your fundamentals, then I've got a few resources here that I've looked into and also asked some of my fellow sewing bloggers on Instagram for their advice as well. So the first thing I would mention is I did find an article from The Independent, and they've put an article of actual sewing machines within it. The only thing I'm cautious about those articles is sometimes they pay to place ads from those brands, so just make sure you read the full article and get an idea of what you're looking for with those brands. Each one will kind of be explained. My lovely friend Sam from Purple Sewing Cloud, she suggests, and she put it very well, so I thought I would just read what she suggests. When you're looking for a sewing machine, she recommends looking for ones that have a one-step buttonhole feature, so something that you can buttonholes when you're sewing them. Doing them manually as a beginner is even more tricky, so if you could find a sewing machine that has a buttonhole feature within it, that's amazing because it will help you guys out a lot in the long run. A top loading bobbin, she suggests. I mean, I've used a top loading and a front loading bobbin, and to be honest there's not much difference in it. I personally don't see much of a difference. They're both similar situation. Also, as long as your machine has a straight stitch and a zigzag stitch, and I'll leave examples of what these look like if you're a complete beginner, that's absolutely fine. Sometimes you'll get sewing machines saying we've got 100 stitches or we've got 40 stitches. It's all frills, to be honest, it's all extras, and I personally, I've used like 3 of the stitches that I've got in my sewing machine and it's got about 100, so it's hard to recommend an exact machine because everyone has a different price, and also I've only tried a few brands. So a few of the brands I've tried and I trust are Singer, Benina, Janome and Brother. I know other people rave about Pfaff machines, and I've seen a lot of people talking about the little mini ones from John Lewis. I've also recommended them to people in the past just because they look really nice. They're £99, but I would say trusted brands are going to be cheaper to maintain and for any kind of parts or servicing, because trusted brands and also universal sort of brands will have more parts available to them to get fixed. So just bear that in mind as well when you're looking for a machine. If you want to buy cheap, that's fine, but trusted brands will usually have better equipment that you can buy, like needles and parts and presser foots and all that stuff will be more widely available. So just to clarify, it depends on your budget. I'd say go with a trusted brand, go with something that has good reviews online. Just make sure you're reading up all those sort of things, and then yeah, just go for it. So that's the biggest one out of the way really. Number two is what is a good project to start with as a complete beginner. Now when I started sewing, I absolutely loved making rectangle skirts, just getting a rectangular fabric and adding in a elastic waistband This is an awesome make for a beginner. You're just sewing in straight lines and you're threading in some elastic and you've got a little skirt to show for it at the end. So I haven't got a tutorial on this, but I am thinking of putting one on the blog for you guys. If you'd like that, let me know in the comments. But number 3 is another question I get asked a lot on Instagram, and that is, what patterns and clothing patterns would you suggest as a complete beginner? Obviously we're all biased, we all have our favourite brands, and there's a lot of independence and a lot of brands to consider out there, and actually I try and mix it up and use a lot, but it's no secret that I love Tilly and the Buttons patterns. It's the reason I got back into sewing last year in summer 2019. Personally for me, I find them user friendly. They have actual photos in their instruction books, not just diagrams. Diagrams confuse me sometimes, especially if they're black and white. Tilly's are all colour, and what is great about them is I'll show you. They have this colour coded feature to show you if they're made for beginners or not. This one, you can see on this one at the beginning it says for beginners, and actually I've made this pattern and it is super easy, very similar to that rectangle skirt that I mentioned a minute ago, and because it says for beginners, this would be an amazing one to start off with. We've also got the Cleo and the Stevie, which I've made a couple of times, and this is great for beginners as well. What's awesome about it is there's no buttons or zip fastenings. You've just got these kind of simple tie-up fastening at the back, and it's an oversized shape, so you can just pop it over your head and it's really easy to do. And then once you get a little bit more advanced, you can use ones like this, which just says for confident beginners. So once you feel like you kind of got a gist about the words inside the patterns, because sometimes they use things like top stitch, like words that maybe you're not familiar with at first. Get yourself the beginner one, start to familiarise yourself with those terminology and things like that, and then once you move on to these sort of patterns, the more confident ones, you'll just know what it means, and actually the steps are a little bit easier to kind of take in as well. Number 4 is equipment. Now, the sort of essential equipment you would need as a beginner sewer, again, it is just part and parcel of starting sewing is to have these things, but also they can change drastically depending on what you prefer. A couple of things I would mention is having a good pair of fabric scissors. I don't actually know where these ones are from, but I'll try and find out, and I'll leave anything that I've mentioned in the description box below. Having some pins. I got one packet and I use them up all the time because I'm working on several makes at once, so maybe get 2 or 3 packs of pins. You want some tailor's chalk or little pencils. This could wash off, this pencil markings, and they're good for things like darts and that kind of thing when you need to make markings on your fabric. Some people prefer to use these little clips for their sewing, and see if these little clips like this instead of pins. I've got some, but I actually prefer to use pins. I think they're a bit better. Some needles as well, like hand sewing needles, that's good for buttons and that kind of thing, like finishing off. A tape measure. You need to measure often, you need to measure your waist, bust measurement, and this can change quite frequently. It's just handy to have this in your kit, as well as like sometimes you need to add on seam allowances or add on extra pieces, just handy to have one of these. Lots of threads in different colours. I just go for this kind of like basic nylon threads. They're usually like £1 for one of these. The trusty unpicker. Let me do a close-up. The unpicking tool, as much as I hate it, I also love it, because we all make mistakes, and it is an essential thing, because you don't want to be using scissors to unpick threads. It can take ages, and also you can damage your fabric by doing that. An unpick a little tool is an essential. I just got this cutting mat, and it's A3 in size, and a lot of people prefer to use a cutting mat, a rotary cutter, which is a rolling cutter, and then fabric weights. I haven't got my rotary to show you, and I haven't got weights yet. They're on their way, because I'm actually getting some for my birthday. But yeah, some people prefer to use a rotary cutter instead of pins and scissors. Moving on to number 5, it is fabric shops. There is so many independents and small brands that are awesome that you can buy from online. My personal favourite is So Miche Sunshine. I will leave a link to her below. It's the lovely Harriet, she runs it, and she has gorgeous fabrics. Her taste when it comes to her buying and sourcing of fabrics from her stockists is just so lovely. In terms of price point, she's not the cheapest, but she's also not the most expensive I've seen, so definitely a great one. New Craft House is awesome for kind of one-off designer pieces, and they source a lot of dead stock fabric, which means like fabrics from high street retailers, designers that are just like end of rolls and that kind of thing, so it's all one-off and really good quality. And then also great for toils, which is, a toil is an item, like a practice item. I highly recommend Pound Fabrics UK. They're a really great shop that I've been getting fabrics from. They're like £1 a metre, some of them £2 a metre. Then maybe have a look at the lower price point fabrics so you can practice. And then number 6 is how to choose the right fabric for your project. Now it depends obviously what you're making, but I would highly suggest reading your pattern instructions before purchasing your fabric. If you're a beginner, I would suggest getting your pattern, looking on the suggested fabrics on your pattern. Every pattern should have this. For example, the Tilly and the Buttons Dominique, it says on the side here, fabric suggestions: the straight skirt, medium weight woven fabric such as cotton, chambray, double gauze, linen, lighter weight and needle cord. And then the flared skirt, it says the same. So you can see it here. Every pattern should have suggested fabrics column or section on it. Read that, then research your fabrics on the retailers that you want to buy from and go from there, and you will be happy as Larry because they should meet up very nicely. If it's opaque, it means that you can't see through it, but opaque and drape, you'll start to see those terms come up quite a lot. Just familiarise yourself with those. Number 7 is troubleshooting. This means troubleshooting your sewing machine. That's really hard to say. First of all, I would say just check your manual, keep your manuals by your side. Here's my instruction book. I have got the Janome DKS 100, and I can just go to thread tensions or whatever it is I need to look at, and it's got everything I need to know in this manual. So first and foremost, troubleshooting issues, it's probably in your book. If, like me, you're also a visual person, then you might prefer to see someone doing it and be shown how to do it rather than reading it. I turn to YouTube a lot for this. I look at YouTube videos, and often or not, there's someone who's done a tutorial for it. I promise you that, or something similar, or a similar sewing machine. YouTube videos are literally like my saviour, to be honest, when it comes to learning new things. Also with troubleshooting, always take it back to basics. Clean your machine, take it apart, give it a good clean, rethread it from scratch, from start to bottom, make sure you've got it in every single thing you need to. With your bobbin, make sure it's the right way round. Again, it depends on the machine, so it's a bit confusing, I know. Change your needle, maybe it's the needle type that you're using for the fabric. Does it need to be thinner, thicker? Does it need to be a jersey needle? All those things you can check on Google. If all else fails and you're still struggling, take it somewhere to get serviced. Get it looked at by a specialist. Obviously at the moment most places will be shut. Getting it serviced is really important, to get it regularly checked and made sure that there's no issues with your machine. Number 8 is zips and closures. Now, I'm not an expert. I still haven't sewn a zip since many years ago. I kind of remember how to sew a zip, but I'm putting it off at all costs. But zips, again, YouTube videos. Buttonholes, make sure your sewing machine has a buttonhole feature and it works magical miracles for you. There's poppers and all sorts of things like that. And just making sure you're practicing, just take it slowly and you will get there eventually. And then we've got finishing your seams. So there's a few ways you can finish seams, and you might see this often in patterns, like finish your seams. Well, I've got a few suggestions for you. You can either use an overlocker, which makes your edges completely neat and tidy. It trims off the edge whilst it stitches a beautiful overstitch. And this is often what you'd see on a shop bought item. You'll see that it's overlocked. Overlocking is great, but this usually requires buying an overlocking machine. You can overlock on a sewing machine as well. My sewing machine has a overlocking foot. I don't have one yet because I have an overlocker, but you can get usually an overlocking foot for your machine and do an overlocking stitch that way. Or you could do a zigzag stitch. A zigzag stitch is just a simple stitch, a zigzag, just to neaten the edges. It's great for beginners. If you just want to neaten it up, then use a zigzag, that's absolutely fine. If you don't want to overlock or overstitch your side seams, or maybe you're working with chiffon or something that really frays, then do a French seam. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but a French seam is where you would sew your item wrong side to wrong side first and then turn it back on itself and then sew it again, so you got this enclosed seam with no edging showing at all. This is great for shirts, blouses, things like that. And also it's just started hammering it down outside. This weather today is just crazy. Number 10 is finishing touches, and I'm talking a little bit louder, hopefully you can hear me over the rain. I really wanted to show you guys some beautiful finishing touches and some ideas that I think you will love. Now, I got sent these labels from Woven Labels UK. I will leave their website here, but also in the description box below, so you can go and see these for yourself. Now, they make personalised labels, so you can actually put in your own labels into your makes, which I think is the perfect finishing touch, because when you're proud of something, you want to show it off, and people can then have a look and see that you've made it. I think it's really lovely. I've got these ones. This one says, "Me made and proud." And they come on this ribbon, so you would just cut and sew it in yourself. That is really cute. I actually made this little design myself. They've got a really cool design feature on their website, so you can choose what text you want it to say, what colour you want the text, what colour you want the label. And I got a couple of other designs as well. This one says "Handmade by Paige," which again, because it's so personalised, I would love to put this in a gift for someone, or if I'm making an item for someone else, or even just my own makes. I think it's really sweet, and obviously I've got it in pink and gold, which I think is really lovely. And then I've got a mint green and white version, and you can add them to your makes, which I think is such a lovely thing to do when you've spent that time over making something, to finish it off with a label. Just kind of gives it a little professional feel as well. And I have a discount code to offer you guys in this video to get 15% off your own labels. You can use the code PAIGE15, I'll pop it here, but also all the details for this will be in the description box below. But I highly recommend going to have a look at Woven Labels UK. They have lots of lovely labels that you can personalise, and they have other things available as well, so go and check them out for lovely finishing touches that you can put in your me made items. Whilst we're on the topic of labels, you may have also seen that I have my little labels that I sell on Etsy. These are my own designs, so I've had them made. Obviously I've designed it, illustrated it and sent them off and had them made, and I sell these on Etsy. Just some sort of ready-made designs. Lots of little indie brands are doing woven labels at the moment. Again, shout out to Pink Coat Club, who does some really gorgeous ones with like made with cat hair and stuff like that, and they're really, really cute. Couple of last little things then. So upcycling, I had a couple of comments on upcycling, but I might do a separate video for this because upcycling is very different to sewing, and there's a lot you can learn about upcycling. It's charity shopping, so charity shopping and having some tips on how to find stuff to upcycle. I've got a whole video on charity shopping tips for beginners, and I will leave that below. But one thing I would mention is just go, when you go shopping in a charity shop or on eBay or something, if you love the print of an item, then I'd say go for it, and often or not you can make something with it. And one main rule about upcycling is if you can find something that's a size or two bigger than your usual size, that will give you some room to play with in terms of altering it or making it into something new. So that's what I'd usually recommend. If you find an item and it's a size or two bigger, then perfect. Someone asked also how to make clothes bigger, and I feel like this is another video entirely. But one quick thing to mention is you could use a contrasting fabric to put in panels on the sides, and that's a really good way to make things bigger, or just pushing out the seam allowance, adding in a panel, that kind of thing. Number 12, which is the last question, is how do you work without a mannequin? I don't have a mannequin. I prefer personally to work on myself. You will see in other videos I'll overlay some footage where I try on the item as I'm making it. So I will put together a couple of seams, and then I will pin together side seams or shoulder seams, and I will try it on myself in the mirror. I'll have a look at the fit of it, and then I will adjust it accordingly how I need to. I always go by the measurements of the patterns based on my measurements, using a tape measure to measure myself. So the patterns are always kind of graded based on an average size. So you might need to alter them ever so slightly, but I would highly recommend just trying it on your body. Don't finish the item, then put it on. If you can do it in stages, then I'd highly recommend doing it that way. Or if you want to get a Mannequin, you can get a Mannequin, but I do it without and it works perfectly fine. So that is it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too long, too wordy, but yeah, hopefully it helps you guys out. I'd love to know in the comments if it did. If there was anything I forgot to mention, then please don't feel afraid to just come and ask me on Instagram message or leave a comment below, and I'll try to get back to you about that as well. Or I can make extra videos if you feel like things needed a bit more attention to detail. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Check me out on Instagram. I am just Paige Joanna over there. And hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!